We expected Prism support, yet we got everything else except actual Prism support. It's always Bermuda that defies our expectation, isn't it?
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today we have yet again another livestream which revealed some more cards for Clan Selection Plus, this time Volume 2, with a focus on the Bermuda Triangle card. And we knew that the main unit, aka the main Grade 3, or in this case actual Grade 4, was going to be of the Prism archetype, as the name was Legendary Prism Duo Nectaria. And that laid down the foundation that this new set release, or this new wave of support from Bermuda, would support the Prism archetype that we got in the previous extra booster set, Twinkle Melody. However, once the reveal started for the lower grade support cards for Bermuda Triangle, we saw that this wasn't actually the case, because these new grade 1s and grade 2s for Bermuda Triangle, well, they do support the clan, but not in the way that we expected it to do. So, without any further ado, let's jump straight into these cards and talk about them, analyze them, and basically get this video over with, as I expect this video to be relatively short in comparison to my usual videos, as there's not a lot to analyze about these cards. And yes, there are a couple of promos that were revealed last Tuesday, and I believe Wednesday we got the second batch, and I will cover them in a separate video probably tomorrow, because I want to talk about them a little bit more in-depthly, and I want to get these Bermuda Triangle cards out of the way and not clutter that video up with those reveals. So, with that excerpt out of the way, let's jump straight into the new grade 1 for Bermuda Triangle, which is Innocence Mernil. And Mernil has the abilities, although in Vanguard the Regular Circle, when placed, cause reveal a normal unit from your hand and put it on the bottom of your deck and draw a card. This is somewhat of an extra mulligan, you could say, as it allows you, if you write this thing, to at least swap one more card from your hand and to potentially draw a better card. Now, the limitation to the fact that it's only normal unit is kind of annoying, because it means you cannot stack triggers back, but in some cases you might not actually want to stack triggers back into the deck, as you could at least use those cards for guard value in the early game. And this could also be very useful to certain archetypes that rely on specific cards to be in a deck. Prisms can search out multiple cards with Prism in the name from the deck, with I believe the grade 1. You also have the Highlander build with Reindeer, so shoveling back multiple copies of grade 3s or grade 4s that are excellent targets might actually be beneficial to you. We also have Riviere that can search them out from the deck, but then again, if you have Riviere copies in your hand, you might not want to shovel them back because you want to write them from your hand in the first place. So, depending on your playstyle and what type of archetype you play, this could actually be way more beneficial than just the extra mulligan that this card provides. Now, on top of this, it also has a secondary effect, which on a Vanguard circle, once a turn, when your grade 3 or greater unit is placed during the battle phase, if this unit is in your back row, you may have one of your Vanguards get power plus 10k until the end of turn. Now, this effect is actually quite versatile in multiple ways, because it specifically states grade 3 or greater, and Bermuda Triangle has grade 4, so that's pretty nice. But it also doesn't specify that it needs to be your Vanguard rewritten, it just needs to be placed on the field during the battle phase. And Bermuda Triangle has loads of playstyles and archetypes that can do this. Of course, the first archetype that comes to mind is Riviere, that rewrites herself in the battle phase with her superior right engine. This allows you to give the second Riviere an extra 10k power, which can be pretty sweet. But with the latest support within the Twinkle Melody extra booster set, we got a whole plethora of archetypes that can do something like this. We got the new main VR of the set itself, which is Happiness Heart Lupina, which can superior call any card from the deck, which effectively can be a grade 3 or greater, thus activating this skill. We can also use it with Anj, which can superior call any card from her hand, thus we can maybe call a grade 3 or greater, thus also again giving our Vanguard plus 10k power. We also have Prism's Image Vert, which can superior call Prism units from the Bind Sun onto the field, and she herself is a grade 3, and we also are having a grade 4, that is the main unit of this set for Bermuda Triangle, which then can activate this skill. And we also, of course, got the new Reindeer for the whole superior right engine of the Highlander build, which allows you to go into any grade 3 or grade 4, which again will activate this skill and give your new Vanguard an extra 10k power. So either we can superior call a new grade 3 or greater to the Vanguard circle with some of our new boss units, or we can rewrite our Vanguard to some extent that then gives our new Vanguard an additional 10k power. And all these skills either can resolve with the fact that you write a new Vanguard and then activate the skill, or these cards that can superior call something to the field happen on attack, thus your Vanguard gains a 10k power while still performing the attack, thus still validating this power increase. So this is a very versatile grade 1 that can find its way in many different decks, which is actually pretty nice because her first skill can also be utilized by multiple strategies. So Innocence Mernil can actually be a very good clan staple for a lot of archetypes and playstyles, which is pretty nice. But then when we go to the grade 2, we have the exact same situation, as the new grade 2 is Nor Fixer Hilda, and her abilities are Cadeas or Rigor Circle. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, this unit gets boost. This is probably live in every deck and every archetype very easily, so that's nice. A 10k booster, meaning if you run multiple grade 2s, you get more value out of this. And this is probably even better in the Highlander build, because it's yet another grade 2 where you can run just one copy of that is pretty flexible. But her secondary effect is where the actual juiciness of this card lies, because that's Auto Rigor Circle. Once a turn, when your grade 3 or greater unit is placed during the battle phase, if this unit is in the back row, you may stand this unit. This is basically the exact same skill as the grade 1, but just worded a little differently. Because the grade 1 is an 8k booster, and then potentially a 10k booster if it's boosting the grade 3 unit or the Vanguard, thus giving you for one battle an 8k power buff, and then for another battle 10k power buff. Or maybe for one battle 18k if you then boost it on that singular battle. Now this grade 2 basically states that for both battles you will give 10k power, which effectively is 2k power more, and depending on what type of unit is boosting, and in the grade 3 case, it actually makes better magic numbers than an 8k booster. And this works in the same scenarios as the grade 1, because either it can be behind your Vanguard and it boosts for both attacks for Riviere or for the Highlander Reindeer deck, or you can put it onto the Rigor Circle, and with your multi-attackers like with Lupina or Ange or Vert, you can first boost it on the first attack for your Rigor, then bounce those units back or remove them from the field, and then superior call a new unit, and then restand this if you superior call the grade 3, and thus you can boost again, making for pretty decent numbers. And interesting enough, with the restanders, or the rewriters in Riviere's and Reindeer's case, you can actually still get value out of the fact if you attack with your Vanguard and you have no standing Rigors and your opponent perfect guards and you hit triggers, you can at least stack the triggers onto your booster behind your Vanguard and still gain power and value of those triggers because the booster will restand. So you still have the value out of that. So basically, this is on par as the grade 1. The only difference is that this will probably make better magic numbers than the grade 1. Only the grade 1 has bigger explosive value if you go for the final boost and the 10k power on the last attack. So you make the first attack weaker, but the second attack stronger. And the grade 1 also has the upside that it has that cycle or that mulligan-ish effect where it ups the consistency of your engine, which this grade 2 doesn't. But you probably have the room to play this grade 2 in some archetypes, so it's a nice addition for Bermuda Triangle. At the generic sense. Now, as for the new main grade 3, which we thought was also leading in a new sub-archetype theme, or at least a big support wave for the Prism archetype, but apparently she is a standalone unit that has nothing to do with anything else for the archetype, because we have a legendary Prism duo, Nectaria, and she has the effect, act on hand, cost, bind this card, search your deck for up to one normal unit, bind it, and shuffle your deck. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. So by minusing one card from hand, you can bind a specific card from your deck as long as it's a normal unit to send it to the bind zone. Now on the surface this sounds like a really bad skill, but in actuality this is really great for the Prism archetype, because the Prism archetype is all around binding your Prism units and then using your grade 3 Prism Image Vert to superior call those units to the field during the battle phase, thus enabling multi-attacks. And the main issue of that deck is to basically set up that bind zone. You don't always have enough targets or the resources to do so. This grade 4 single-handedly from your hand can activate the full power of the skill, because you can just send it to the bind zone and then select the grade 2 or grade 1 which you want, and then also bind it from your deck, and you basically are set up for that turn because you have 2 targets and you can call them to the field and have 5 attacks. which is actually pretty decent. And at the same time, it deck filters for 1 card, thus increasing the potential of hitting triggers. Now, she also has a secondary effect, which makes her also a pretty nice beater and a potential backup ride target, but in most cases, you'll never want to go into her, at least from my understanding, because she has the skill, continues on Vanguard to Vanguard Circle. During your turn, if you have a card with the same card name as this unit in your bind zone, this unit gets power plus 10k, and if this unit is on the Vanguard Circle, it gets critical plus 1 and drive plus 1. So basically what you can have is a 24k beater on the Rearguard Circle, or you can have a 24k beater Vanguard with double critical and triple drive. Now, it's actually much better on the Rearguard Circle, because it can also gain another 10k if you combine it, I believe, with the Grade 1, which gives a 10k power buff to the front row, which then turns it into a 34k beater, which is actually pretty decent. And to set up this card, it's actually pretty easy, because you just need 1 copy in your hand, and you can bind her, and then select another copy from your deck and bind it as well, and then Superior Call it with the Grade 3, and then you basically have the condition met. Now, you might be tempted to write this thing for the critical and drive and a potential higher base power, but I wouldn't recommend it because the Prism Image for Grade 3 does so much more, and the Grade 3 already can get the extra drive check. So the only advantage you will gain from doing this is the extra critical and the 1k higher base power. But you will lose the bind aspect, because the Grade 3 can also bind more cards while it's a Vanguard, and the Grade 3 allows you to multi-attack for potential 5 attacks. So honestly, I don't think that trade-off is worth it for just the critical and the higher base power. That's it. This is mainly a rearguard beater and a way to increase the consistency of your deck, because the fact that she has Prism in her name is probably the greatest asset to this card for the archetype, because that means you now finally have 4 more copies of a Prism unit that can be used with the engine that the deck already has. So the more Prism cards that are available to us, the better it is for the archetype. And it seems we only had the Grid 1, the Grid 2, and the Grid 3. Just having this Grid 4 as an extra option immediately makes it worth it, because we are lacking the numbers. So overall, it's a nice addition to the Prism archetype. Will it revolutionize the archetype? No, it wouldn't. But at the very least, it's nice for Bermuda Triangle that they have new tools to play with. And I think the Grade 1 is probably the best asset for Bermuda Triangle in a general sense from these 3 new cards that we see. And that basically concludes this Cardfight update. As I said, there isn't really a lot to go over. Like, we have these 3 Bermuda Triangle cards, but they, besides the Grade 1, which is probably the most interesting one, they don't really bring a lot of new things to the table, as they basically build upon things that we already know and already have seen. But tomorrow, we're going to go over these new promos, which honestly are pretty exciting, because some of them are pretty interesting and pretty damn strong when used in the right circumstances. So if you're interested about that and you like waifu units, then definitely stick around for the next video that we're going to do tomorrow, because tomorrow it's all about female units that are pretty damn spicy. This video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one.